voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah, it's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
John, you know what? After that, we come on, and I don't know if we're worthy of that introduction. How do you feel about that?
I think that goes to your deeper feelings about self-worth, Brad, and I would remind you are worth it.
That is John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. We start the show off a little bit differently on Friday. I don't know why, just the tradition we started doing where that's our barbershop intro. I love barbershop. I have always loved barbershop. Matter of fact, I don't know if I told you this, John. Years ago, when I was still doing my mobile DJ things, I did a Christmas party for a group of people every year. They booked me for 10, 12 years. And a couple of times, and they always had some kind of an entertainment before, after dinner, before dancing and things like that. It's a company called National Farm and Power. I still remember that. It was matter of fact, it probably was something to do with agriculture. That's what it was. It was like a group that talked about, it was like does that name ring a bell, National Farm and Power?
It doesn't, no.
Well, it was some kind of a group where I think they represented farm equipment manufacturers and retailers, stuff like that. Anyway, a couple years in a row, normally they change it up every year. 2 years in a row, they had a barbershop quartet in the same one, and they were so good that even the young people enjoyed it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes if you have a mixed group of ages, you know what I mean? And some people go, like they bring in like a rapper, the old people go, oh my God, who's this guy?
Yeah, but a barbershop is something that all age groups can appreciate.
Yes, because it has that unique harmony to it. Plus, it's 4 or 5 dudes who are usually crooning together, and they have some visual aspects to them as well, too. John, but also what we do on Friday morning, because of the fact that it's a special day, we bring in the Polka Boys.
Time for the John Combest Top 3.
Now, you may be asking yourself, what is the John Combest Top 3? Well, first off, John Combest puts together this incredible website every single day of his life for the past 23 years. And on the morning show right here, we give him a chance to highlight what he thinks are the top 3 elements of what his John Combest program website is that morning. And we start off with this guy. Your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we start off with?
In third place.
Yesterday, we discussed Brad Hildebrand's contributions to Missouri state government. Most of them have to do with just paying taxes and standing in line at different offices. But one of them involves being part of a MoDOT project. And Brad, in that spirit today, I'll call your attention to a headline from Jacob Barker from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. MoDOT taking back road funds after St. Louis area governments spent too slowly. I imagine you know more about this topic than I do, Brad, because you know a lot about road construction and the way that this type of stuff works. Your dad, after all, was a civil engineer. What I'll point out, Brad, Jacob Barker does a good job describing it to even the John Combest of the world could understand this. The federal government gives the state government a bunch of money, and then the state government gives it to local governments to do some road projects. And in the St. Louis area, that local group is called the East-West Gateway Council of Governments. As Jacob Barker describes it, MoDOT came to these groups a few years ago and said, hey, you guys sometimes just sit on this money we give you. You guys got to spend it, or else the federal government is going to turn off that spigot, or at least slow down that spigot of money. So, hey, local governments. When we give you money, do something with it. Do some road projects with it. Now, MoDOT this year is making good on their promise. This week, they went to the East-West Gateway Council of Governments and said, hey, you know that $20 million that you guys just have sitting around that you don't think you're going to spend this year? We'll go ahead and take that back. We'll claw that back, and we'll make up our mind on what we want to do with it. Now, for their part, East-West Gateway, the way I interpret this piece, says, okay, you guys are kind of right, but can you guys at least spend that federal money here in the St. Louis area? And as I read it, Brad, MoDOT says, sure. In the spirit of fair play, we'll administer these projects, but we'll spend that additional $20 million right here. And where those projects would work would be ones, let's see, 70 and 170 interchange here. Sorry, I'm just reading this as it comes up. New signs on Interstate 70 and 170. Bridge work over Labadee Creek in Franklin County. Some pavement and bridge work on Gravois near 270. And resurfacing on Lindbergh between 70 and Page Boulevard. So what we have, Brad, state government, particularly MoDOT, actually making good on a threat and saying, we told you guys, if you don't spend the money, we're going to take it back. So guess what? We're going to take the money, but we will do you guys a solid and spend it on projects here.
Now, John, was the money that was, and there's a bunch of questions I have for you on this because I do know more about this than I should. Was the money from East-West Gateway, did they already have that allocated to other organizations, to other munis, and the munis didn't spend it, or East-West Gateway didn't allocate it to any of the munis or any of the other regional counties or things like that to spend? Which one?
That's a good question, Brad. I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that East-West Gateway in a statement said that MoDOT's plan was, quote, it was not presented in a way that left room for negotiation. East-West Gateway said in a memo describing MoDOT's offer. So I don't know, Brad. I don't know if the munis themselves were dragging their feet. I think ultimately, though, at some level, it's the responsibility of East-West Gateway to crack the whip to these munis at a certain point in the year and say, hey, guys, we're through Q2 and you guys haven't spent this. What are you guys going to do?
You know who's on the East-West Gateway? There are two people that I know.
I don't know that, Brad. Who's on there? Is it Steve Ellman?
Steve Ellman and Mike Elam.
Oh, wow. That's interesting, Brad.
They're both on there. And matter of fact, I still have not heard back from Kevin Kleen, but of course...
No, are you serious?
Of course.
I thought he would have just sped to the phone and had you on speed dial, Brad.
John says I've poisoned the well on that deal. But see, the thing that's sort of crazy about that is, here's a perfect example of, and I'm not criticizing East-West Gateway, maybe to a certain extent maybe I am criticizing. I'm criticizing all agencies. This is the problem with government spending, is that like John being a frugal guy, if I had $100,000 and I said, John, you've done a great job with me on this show. Here's $100,000. And John says, Brad, just give me $20,000 and I'll think what I'm going to do with that other $80,000. And I said, okay, John. So a year later, John says, hey, Brad, I'm ready for that $80,000. I go, John, I already spent it. Didn't seem like you needed it. I know.
Brad would say I've already bought 800 new domains.
But see, this is like the whole thing with government, in that if you get a budget, if you don't spend it, you don't get that budget next year. So in other words,
you take it right back. So what you're saying, I think, Brad, is that it encourages folks, once they're given an allocation of money, to spend it whether they need it or not. Because guess what? You don't get good boy points if you return it back to the feds.
Exactly. It's like giving your kid an allowance, and it's supposed to last him for a whole weekend. 2 days after you give him an allowance, he says, Dad, can I have another $10? What happened to that 10 I gave you yesterday? Well, I spent it already. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. But that's the mentality most of us have, right? We spend stuff.
I think they just need more Brad Hildebrand committees to fill binders, Brad.
God, you will never give up on me in that story of being on that MoDOT committee, will you?
I love that, Brad. I just picture you sitting there looking at your watch, thinking, I have so much to say, but they also said they would feed me, and I don't want to leave early.
Oh, I didn't get lunch. By the way, there's an interesting aspect of that, is that this is, have I ever told you this part of that story? That at the time we had a contract Matter of fact, my contract had just ended because I'd sold the company. I had a contract with IDOT because they were doing this big bridge job on the Poplar Street Bridge and the whole bit, and we had a contract to provide them with our traffic data, as well as we gave them one of our two-way radios that they had in their dispatching office over in Collinsville on one of our frequencies, and any of my guys, if they had problems on the Poplar Street Bridge, they would go direct to the dispatcher at IDOT and talk to them, hey, there's a problem, blah, 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 blah. And man, it worked really great, and they gave us a lot of credit on that. Well, the funny part of the story was two of the engineers who I work with at IDOT were on the same committee. And when MoDOT was saying, well, we're going to try this, the one engineer sometimes would look at me and roll his eyes and kick me under the table or something like that because we'd already done it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'd done it with IDOT, and if it wasn't me involved in the IDOT project, IDOT was already doing it. And it was like, okay, this is sort of funny because, and what's interesting about it is sometimes after the meeting I go, why don't you guys speak up about that? And he goes, bureaucracy, what good does it do?
Yeah, it wouldn't do any good.
Right. Okay.
And then you were able to educate them on the best way to influence Illinois government is you would have your guys send brown paper bags of cash to Governor George Ryan, and that's how he went to jail.
No, we just take him to Hooters.
You leave that part of the story out, Brad.
I'm sorry, John. No, we take him to Sauget. That's how we'd influence him. Okay, ready for number 2?
Yeah, give it to us.
Up a notch to number 2.
Boy, there must be a U.S. senator that just loves listening to Brad Hildebrand, because yesterday on Fox News, Senator Eric Schmitt, here's a headline, Brad, shame on Pritzker. Missouri's Eric Schmitt calls out Illinois' governor's shocking crime stance. You know the story, Brad. We've talked about it multiple times this week. J.B. Pritzker tells Donald Trump, we don't want or need your help fighting crime in Illinois, particularly in Chicago. In this interview, Eric Schmitt points to what Donald Trump did on crime in D.C. Schmitt says there's been an 85% decrease in carjackings, a 50% decrease in robberies. Schmitt says, look, Donald Trump took on these big problems that people said weren't going to be able to be solved. Excuse me. He took on the border. And look at what's happened with the border, Brad. So many fewer border crossings. And now he's taking on crime. He has the chops and the ability and the strength to handle these big issues. So shame on J.B. Pritzker for saying that he doesn't need Donald Trump's help. The people of Chicago say differently, Brad.
We've talked about it before. Trump has backed him into a corner. I mean, essentially he said, hey, I can help you with your crime problem. And they're going, oh, we don't need your help. And yet the whole thing is just so ridiculous. I mean,
and Brad, I'd also point out, too, one of the things that I think Schmitt said that we've talked about before is that Schmitt says he can't believe that Democrats are once again on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. And most Americans say, we don't care what kind of badge this law enforcement officer is wearing. We just want a reduction in crime.
John, and once again, I heard part of that interview, and he couldn't be more spot on by saying that.
Yes.
Like if you called 911 and you don't
What
care.
is 911, Brad? I don't think I've ever called it.
You've never called it before. When you call 911, and let's say somebody breaks into your house, and they're in your house, and you call 911, you don't care if it's the county police, the guy, our Florissant police, or our Wentzville police, or whoever. Some guy shows up with a gun and stops the issue. You know what I'm saying? Nobody cares.
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying.
Nobody
Brad.
cares who it is.
Just don't want to give Donald Trump a win on anything.
It's just bizarre. And especially with Chicago, I mean, the crazy thing about it is they talk about, and the interesting thing is I find it fascinating, what's the old saying about statistics? There's a saying about that.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
Fools don't lie, but statistics, I don't know what it is.
Right. I mean, they're given like year over year. That would be like saying the great stock market crash in the late 20s. That would be like somebody saying in the late 30s, well, look how better we've done from 10 years ago. Okay, you couldn't have done much worse in the late 20s when the stock market crashed. You know what I'm saying, John?
I feel like you're an accountant looking at your balance sheet every year, Brad.
You're so good about that. Okay, ready for number 1?
Yeah, let's do it.
The number 1.
A headline today from the great Jason Rosenbaum at St. Louis Public Radio. U.S. Rep. Bob Onder hopes lawmakers make Missouri's congressional lines more Republican. Jason was able to sit down with Bob Onder, or maybe they did it over the phone. I couldn't tell. Anyway, got together with Bob Onder to talk about congressional redistricting. Jason points out that some in the congressional delegation you could assume are kind of lukewarm about redistricting. And Jason points to Sam Graves, generally considered a pretty mainline Republican from up in the northwest part of the state. And Jason points out that Sam Graves originally opposed that 7-1 map back in 2022 because he said, hey, that's going to make some Republican congressional districts a little bit more competitive. You guys, we got to remember there's not always going to be great years for Republicans. Anyway, Bob Onder's point is that what Bob would like to see from this district is taking areas that naturally seem to make more sense to be lumped together and put them together. And specifically, Bob Onder would love to see all of St. Charles County be in one congressional district. Jason, as he's frequent to do, as is wont to do, he does a great job in pointing out that the current 3rd congressional district is just ridiculous. And Jason points to the fact that observers have referred to it as the Pac-Man district for its odd shape. So Onder's point is, why don't we just have St. Charles County in one congressional district? What this would mean, Brad, in practical terms, is that Ann Wagner would have to give up some of St. Charles and pick up some Republican votes somewhere else. So probably Jefferson County, as Bob Onder sees it. But as Onder points out, Ann would pretty much be swapping one set of Republican voters for another set of Republican voters. So it's not like it would hurt Ann Wagner. Now, Brad, I think that 3rd congressional district, as you know, you've seen the map, it's just ridiculous. And I think it makes a lot of sense to put everybody in St. Charles County in the same congressional district.
Isn't it the same thing in Jefferson County? Doesn't Jefferson County have 2 different congressional districts as well, too, the way it's set up?
Let me see. I have Ann's map up because I just knew that Brad Hildebrand was going to ask me that question. I do know that in mid-Missouri, you're right, it does look like Ann shares part of that district with Jason Schmitt.
Which is sort of weird.
Why not the 8th congressional district?
Why don't they
Brad, we also see an instance in Columbia, Missouri, where you have 2 congressmen. You have Bob Onder and Mark Alford splitting Columbia. Now, if I'm a Boone County person, I think, dude, we want our own congressperson here to lobby for us, you know?
That is just so weird. And I think it goes along Broadway, doesn't it like one of the main streets in like Columbia, doesn't it go like east to west and it's like north and south? If you're north of this street, you're in, I mean, literally, I think the way it is, if you live or have a business on that street, I can't remember which street it is. If you're on one side of it, you have one congressman, and if you're on the other side, you have the other congressman, which doesn't.
You know, that happens quite a bit, Brad.
Doesn't make any sense.
Your father, who loves show tunes, steps out of the grave and says, "On Broadway, on Broadway."
You know, John makes reference to the fact that as I grew up, my father, and this is why I shouldn't say this, my father was a World War II hero. Literally 3 Bronze Stars, combat valor, the whole bit. Served all over Europe and then was on a troop ship on the way to Japan to invade Japan before we dropped the bombs on Japan. But my dad was heavily into show tunes, and I grew up having my father play all these, I mean, Man of La Mancha, I can still sing some of those songs. I'm the man of La Mancha. And one of my favorite was South Pacific. My dad had the soundtracks of all these movies that were musicals. There is nothing like a dame, nothing in the world, which is now politically incorrect. You couldn't call a woman a dame, right? Hey,
never,
dame.
Never.
Right.
And that's why a lot of folks, if they've seen you before you go into a chamber meeting, a lot of times you have anxiety about whether you're going to get kicked out. And that's why folks can catch you outside the door saying, "Dream the impossible dream."
that's Man of La Mancha. And Gigi and all those kind of things. And by the way, Wendy Berry is no longer with the Colleyville Weldon Springs Chamber of Commerce. And I told her, I talked to her on the phone a couple of weeks ago and offered her the job with the Weldon, with the Westplex Chamber of Commerce.
And did you tell her that you have no ability to pay anyone anything for anything, and if she wants to be a part of what you're doing, you got to write her a check?
Not just the opposite. I said, I'll split the membership with you. You take take half, I'd take half. She turned it down. I mean, the crazy thing about that is on the phone, she says, well, I got like 5 or 6 people I can sign up today. I go, well, fine, sign them up. She never did. So anyway, that's a whole other story. Okay, it's time for us to take a break. And John, I have to warn you, I'm using a little bit, having some software issues here. We've switched over to another new software package, which is causing me a little bit of a problem here and there. But
are you saying that your package isn't operating these days, Brett?
my software package, John.
Oh, got it. Okay. Well, I mean, at a certain point, it just gets soft, right?
Yes. For my age, it's always soft. Okay.